Hello, I just want to make a quick video for you for lecture 3.3 on experiments in hiring discrimination and lecture 3.4 experiments in voting and accountability. Lecture 3.3 begins with this very cute YouTube video. It's a social experiment with children looking at gender equality. It's only like 3 or 4 minutes long. You can watch it. It's really cute. It just kind of sets the emotional tone. Then we talk about different areas of inequality in the labor market. And we focus on this issue, who gets hired, hiring discrimination, because this is one aspect of inequality, labor market inequality, that we can study using experiments. Other aspects of labor market inequality are a little bit more difficult to experiment with. So we're focusing on this aspect, hiring discrimination, in this module on experiments. First, I talk about status-based hiring discrimination. These are the 3 categories of that we look at in this lecture. And I have a short video here on, or a Prezi actually, about expectation states theory, which is a social psychology kind of theory about how status hierarchies are reinforced. You may or may not want to use, maybe you want to skip this. It's a little bit advanced. Then we asked how best to study hiring discrimination, what kinds of experiments can we do? And in this study, we actually do several of these. We do this lecture covers lab experiments, field experiments, and audit experiments. So these are the studies that we look at. 3 studies on openly gay men, which includes a lab experiment, a field experiment, and an audit study. So this section is nice because it looks at the same outcome of hiring discrimination, but with 3 different types of experiments. The next group is category is racial minorities, and this is the study that's covered in the quiz, Emily and Greg versus Jamal and I forget the other person's name. Anyways, and then the third set of studies is Shelley Carell's studies on motherhood penalty, and she, in her 2007 paper, includes both a lab study and an audit study. So this is kind of the outline for the course, and they could you could print this up as a worksheet if you want to have them follow along while you're presenting. So the first one is with openly gay men. We have the 3 studies here. Study 1 is a lab experiment where college students are rating resumes. Study 2 is a field experiment where Confederates are going through the mall and either wearing a gay pride hat or a I Love America hat and reporting on their experiences when they're applying for jobs. And the third one is audit study with paired resumes. And then we just go through the 3 studies. So here's the one on, this is the college experiment, the college lab experiment, where resumes are evaluated. This is where I take some time to talk about profile plots. This is actually, I would add kind of my methodological, if you want, you can, in lecture 3.1, the slides are here at the back. Here in starting from slide 31, interaction effects. So I talk about, advanced design experiments, factorial designs. This was the simple experiment that we did with the simple comparison and the simple analysis. But you can imagine a more complicated experiment where we do a factorial design with a 2x2 design, and then you have, I give this mini lecture on marginal effects and interaction effects, and then show that you can get, you might have multiple trends. Here in a 2x2, you have the treatment and the covariate, so you have 2 trend lines. I might actually start my lecture 3.3 by giving this kind of mini lecture on advanced experiments, factorial designs, and interaction effects, so that once we hit these kind of plots, they'll be able to interpret these better. But that's up to you. So in this study, the first plot is the ratings of male participants, and the finding here, you can ask the students to interpret this, but the finding here is basically that male students discriminate primarily against gay men. Then you look at the female participants, and female participants generally discriminate against all men. So here the female participants rank female homosexual and heterosexual women higher than homosexual and heterosexual men. So that's an interesting finding. It's always a fun finding to talk about with the students. And then the second study here is the field experiment, where two groups of Confederates go into the mall. One, they're either wearing a gay pride hat or an American flag, or I guess Texas flag hat. And then they report on their interactions with the employers. In terms of, and the interesting thing about this study is they're trying to separate formal and interpersonal discrimination, and they find no evidence of formal discrimination, but they do find some evidence of interpersonal discrimination in the different measures of that. So you can look at that. This is the audit study. Okay, and then in the audit study, you have again openly gay men, fictitious postings, and you can see in model 2 that sorry, I guess the main effects are down here at the bottom. So the effect of gay here, so these are all covert interaction terms, but the interesting thing is the main effect here for being gay is significant when controlling for is still significant when controlling for region and traits. It's still significant when you control for laws and required skills and attributes, but the main effect becomes extremely small, negligibly small, when you control for this one variable, gay and state level attitude. So also what's interesting is that the effects of law here, the gay city law and county law and state law are significant, but when you control for state level attitudes, then the significance of these, the county law and state law, becomes insignificant, which means that basically this state level attitudes are kind of what's driving both the laws as well as the likelihood of discrimination. So this is a really powerful kind of regression table. And I think also, you can also take some time to explain like what is an audit study. They're sending out these resumes because the rest of the experiments are also using audit studies. So that's this. And then racial minorities, also an audit study, just by changing white names and black names, interchanging white names and black names. And you can see percent callbacks, the ratios here, you know, explain that here's the percent callback for white names, here's the percent callback for African-American names, here's the ratio, and here's the p-value is in parentheses, right? So all of these are significant except for, so, you know, Chicago, white names over black names, Boston, white names over black names, significant. Females, white names over black males, sorry, females and males, like, it's significant. Females in administrative jobs, still significant. The only comparison, which is where white and black names are not significant, is females in sales jobs. And you can see the ratio is smaller and the p-value is not significant. So this study really finds that racial discrimination is true for men and women. It's also true for women in higher levels of position, higher level jobs. But for women in low-skilled jobs, the discrimination is not significant. So that's an interesting kind of intersectionality to talk about. Same thing here. Similarly, the callback ratio for this is for white and African American names by high quality resume and low quality resume. The ratio is significant. So white applicants with high quality resumes get more callbacks than low quality resumes, but for African American names, African American names with high quality resumes do not get significantly more callbacks than low quality resumes. So this is kind of an education penalty for African American sounding names. And here you can see the ratio is close to 1 and the p-value is very high. So I just use panel A here. Panel A is a subjective measure of quality. So I'm ignoring panel B. That's something else. Okay. Lastly, I go to the motherhood study by Shelley Carell. Here are some interesting statistics about the motherhood penalty. Basically, I make the point that employed mothers are now the group of women who account for most of the gender gap in wages. So if you are under the age of 35 and a non-mother, then the pay gap for women without children under the age of 35 is is not statistically significant. So we should not be talking generally about like male, female, or gender pay gap, but specifically about the motherhood penalty. And so Shelley Carell looks at this in 2 studies. She does a lab experiment and an audit study. These are the results of the lab study, where she finds that being a parent is associated with higher commitment. Being female is also correlated with higher level of commitment and perception of commitment and confidence. So being a female applicant has a benefit. However, being so the motherhood interaction here is where you get the penalties. It's not with females, right? So if you are a mother, that's where the confidence decreases and the perception of confidence and commitment both decrease, right? So we talk about the interaction here. So I think this illustrates nicely how female applicants are actually advantaged, but mothers are disadvantaged. So, okay, and then these are the findings of the audit study. Parent being a parent does not have a significant effect on callback. Being a female applicant does have a significant positive and significant effect, but being a mother has a negative effect. So again, this is the motherhood interaction. And then, we can come back and evaluate these studies all together. So again, this particular lecture is where I introduce these advanced kind of factorial designs where you have maybe a treatment and a covariate that you're looking at. So you have a 2x2 or a 2x2x2, something like that, and interaction effects. And this board work here is kind of how I build up. I start with two trends. First of all, where there's no effect difference between them here. So I'm looking at aggressive behavior by the treatment, seeing a violent video game, and gender, and then the interaction of those. So these are the 2 marginal effects that I'm looking for, and the interaction effect. And then I build up how, here's no difference in effects. Here's the gender effect. Here's the treatment effect. Here's the treatment plus gender effect. Both of the marginal effects are here. And here is interaction effect, and then I give some other examples of where the interaction effects happen. So this is the lecture where I talk about interpreting trends and looking for confirming interaction effects. So, okay, that's 3.3, and now I go to 3.4. experiments, and so 2 experiments in voting participation, boosting voter participation, and 2 experiments in elite politician accountability. So accountability of elected officials. So here's a brief history of experimental methods in political science, with this great quote about in 1909 about how politics is not an experimental science. The study that we're looking at today, 1924, is one of the first experiments in political science. And compared to psychology or sociology, experimentation in political science has developed much more slowly. So here are some areas where experiments can be applied in political science. And we look first at voter politics, voter participation. By contrast, this 1927 study with the 2012 Facebook I Voted experiment. Both of these are experiments in voter participation. The 1927 study is just kind of fun. It's fun to look at the setup. I'll let you look at that and the covariates and the methods and how they report findings. So nothing quantitative, but still interesting design. Study 2, the Facebook experiment, is the paper that is on the quiz. There's an informational message and a social message and a control. And then I kind of show, I have them look through the paper to find these numbers. So, there's 2 effects, outcomes, the clicking the I voted button and clicking the polling place info button. Who clicked the I voted button in the social message group? It's 20%. In the info message, it was this. In the control group, it was that. And so I show that the effective treatment on clicking I voted the social group minus the info group is this 2.808% difference. Info minus control is about 0. So this is not significant. So the social does have some effect. And next, here's the effective treatment on the polling place info, which is like quite small, but also significant. So that's the Facebook study. We talk about, you can talk about voter participation and, like, is this effective or not? Is this kind of treatment, is this something that we want to do in the future? Should we do more of this? Okay, and then 2 experiments in elite politics. One is an anti-corruption experiment in Indonesia. One is a parliament accountability experiment in Uganda. Here's the setup for the Indonesia study. They're looking at theft. They're looking at corruption in road building projects. And here the KDP National Development Bank or program in Indonesia gives funds to like 15,000 villages every year. So it's a very large sample frame. And so here the data come from projects in 608 villages in 2003 and 4. And they're looking at 2 kinds of controls, 2 types of treatments. The first treatment is an audit. So audit and control here is whether the project was audited or not, or whether it was the problem where the government, the local village government was told that they might be audited. And then the other, so this is kind of a top-down treatment. And then the other type of treatment is this bottom-up kind of treatment. It's invitations to some accountability meetings, like a town hall meeting. So this experiment it's a 2x3, the audit and control versus the invitation to these meetings and control. And they're really testing kind of a top-down form of accountability versus a bottom-up grassroots form of accountability. And the results show that for the audits, so let's see, the outcome of interest here is the percent missing major items in roads and in ancillary projects. So, and then in the control group, let's see, treatment mean. Here, this is the mean. So here, no fixed effects. This is the column that matters. The effect of the audit is here in model 3. This is the important finding, which is that the audit reduced theft of major items and in roads and in ancillary projects. And the p-values for these are significant or pretty significant for the top one. So this model 3 is the important thing. And these they do some different tests of this. So the effect of the audit is confirmed again in model 5 and again in model 7. Although the accountability here, it's not significant, but for this one it is. So this basically confirms that the audits, like the threat to audit the government is significant, has a significantly decreases theft. So the second finding, so now they're going to look at the effects of the grassroots meetings, and here, nowhere, the treatment effect here for the grassroots meetings is not significant anywhere. So the moral of this story is that top-down controls do make local government more accountable, but the threat or these kind of bottom-up grassroots accountability meetings or town hall meetings do not have a significant effect in reducing corruption. The last study here is of a kind of a scorecard in Uganda for parliamentarians. The NGO or the experimenters created these kind of scorecards to help voters, give voters information about politicians. The problem is that these scorecards are extremely complicated. So much different types of information here. They have many different hypotheses about voter attitudes, politicians' behavior, electoral outcomes. In the end, they found they had no significant findings. I use this example because I contrast these two studies because I think the Indonesia study is designed very well. It has a top-down and a bottom-up intervention, and they're able to test both of them at the same time and show that the top-down intervention works. This 2010 study, on the other hand, is way too complicated. The treatment is way too complicated, all of this information here. And as a result, they found no significant findings. So this is these are the two studies. Yep. And lastly, I want to say in class, I did an experiment. If you want to know more about this, in class last week, I did this in-class experiment. This was actually Delara's idea about, maybe we could do some in-class experiment about the poker face. Let me show you the video real fast. So I have the two students facing each other, maintaining eye contact until one of them laughs. Okay, so that's the experiment, that's the outcome. And the question is, how does, so this is, we use personality. Do personalities do personality traits predict longer poker faces? So for each section, I had the students take their big 5 personality traits. The first section, section 1 wanted to try neuroticism. So I got the students told me their neuroticism scores. I grouped them into high and low. And then I randomly paired them. So we have a low-low group, a low-high pairing, and a high-high neuroticism pairing. And I was able to do 5 experiments in these 2 groups, and then a 4th one here. And I tallied up like how many seconds did it take them to break their poker faces. And you can see that the low neuroticism groups pairs break their poker faces longer, and if you are high neuroticism, you can hold a poker face longer. So the second class did extroversion. These results were the most significant. So high introverts, sorry, extroverts with extroverts didn't even last 20 seconds. Their poker faces were so short. Whereas like introverts with introverts, they would just go forever. I actually had to stop them because all 3 introvert pairs went longer than 2 minutes. So, and then the third group section tried agreeableness, and we didn't find any significant findings for agreeableness. So this was fun for the 3 classes. We found that extroversion was the most significant. Neuroticism also seems significant, and agreeableness seems not too correlated with poker faces. So a lot of Instagram, Instagrammable photos and videos came out of this. It was just kind of a fun thing to do. It took us I think about 20 minutes to run this. I'd be happy to share this Excel spreadsheet with you, and if you have questions, I can kind of go over how I set it up, and how I randomly pick these pairs and timer and everything. Having all this ready before you do it is helpful, so you can just like jump right into the experiment. And I think the students, like, they loved it. It was really fun, and thanks to Lara for that really great idea. So okay, that's everything. And please let me know if you have any questions. I'll be happy to help you out, share anything I have.